Hi, this is the video lesson for our reading class today. So we're going to talk about vocabulary, which we started off the semester with, but we've passed the middle of the semester. I want to start swinging back around to some of the skills we talked about at the beginning to review them. So when we began the semester, we talked about some various strategies that we can use when we run into words that we don't know in our reading. And we talked about several strategies. One of the strategies we talked about was using the context of the word to make a guess about what the word means. So by context, we mean the other words in the sentence. Con is a Greek or Latin root that means with. Text is a Greek or Latin root that means writing or words. So with the other writing, with the other words, the words that are with a certain word. So if I don't know a word in a sentence, sometimes I can look at the other words around it and make a guess about what it means. Now, I want to say something about this guessing. When we're encountering words that we don't know in our reading, our first instinct is to go to a dictionary and look them up. And from a learning point of view, that is not a good strategy. And the reason is this. Think about if all the words we've ever encountered in our life are here in our mind, right? And truly, every word we've ever encountered is somewhere in our consciousness, but only about 20% of those words are here in our conscious mind. So those are words that we can say, I know this word, here's what it means, and here's how I use it. But a great number of the words that we have encountered in our life are not in our conscious mind. They are in our subconscious. Our subconscious. So they're somewhere in our brain, in our mind, but we can't say what they mean, and we can't use them in a sentence. You know, you think, well, I've seen that word before, but I'm not sure what it means. Or sometimes I'm not even sure I've seen that word before. But if we've ever encountered it, it's somewhere there in our consciousness, whether it's in our immediate conscious mind or in our subconscious. Now, what we want is we want words, when we learn them, to go into our conscious mind. We want them to go into our mind so that we remember what they mean and we can recognize them the next time we see them. So that's the same thing as saying that we want them to go into our long-term memory. It would be good if words, when we learn new words, if they go into our long-term memory rather than into our short-term memory. If they go into our short-term memory is where we store information just for a little while to use it, just for a few hours or a few days. It's not something that we have to remember for the over a long period of time. So if we're trying to build our vocabulary, it's better if we can get new words into our long-term memory rather than into our short-term memory. And when we go straight to a dictionary and look up a word, guess where it goes? It goes into our short-term memory. It doesn't go into our long-term memory. So what can we do to make more sure that a new word will go into our long-term memory? What we do is we need to play with it. We need to mess around with it a little bit. We need to worry about it or think about it, deal with it in some way, right? If we do that, if we play with it a little bit, if we work with it a little bit, then it's going to go into our long-term memory, not into our short-term memory. The next time we see that word, we're going to have a better idea of what it meant because it will be in our long-term memory, rather than not recognize it at all because it only went into our short-term memory. So what we want to find ways to play with a word, to think about it, to play around with it, to mess around with it, to worry about it a little bit, because then it will go into our long-term memory. Now, think about the way we learn vocabulary when we're children, when we're tiny children, just learning how to talk, how to speak. You know, when we come across a new word, our mother doesn't hand us a dictionary and say, well, look it up, right? She doesn't even give us a definition of it. Oh, I'm using this new word now. Now, this word means this. She just uses the word, and we hear the word. We hear the context of it. We hear the sentence that she uses it in and the situation that she uses it in. And because we hear it in that context, we see it in that context, it goes more reliably into our long-term memory. Now, the next time she uses the word, we recognize it. We know what the context was before. So in this new context, we say, oh, that's what I thought it meant before, and I was right. Or I thought that meant this, but look, it doesn't fit now. All right? So when we play with the word, when we make guesses about it, we don't have to guess correctly. We just have to guess. We just have to play with it and make a guess. That way, it goes into our long-term memory, and the next time we see it, the next time we encounter it, we remember that first encounter, and then we can either say, oh yes, I was right, I guessed right, it works in this new sentence too, or, oh wait, I thought it meant this, but it clearly didn't because look at this new way it's being used. All right, so I know that it's very tempting to go look in a dictionary when we run into a word we don't know, but two things happen when we do that. One is it's only going to go into our short-term memory, and two, if we find that word in our reading, we have to stop reading, come out of the zone, go get a dictionary, look it up. That's not very effective, right? If we're reading stuff that is at the right level, we'll be able to understand generally what's going on, even if we don't go look that word up. But we should be stopping and saying to ourselves, staying in the zone, what do I think that word means? What does it seem to mean in this situation? Okay? So one of the ways that we play with words is by using the context. So I'm going to end this video. We're going to come back and try a few examples of doing that. All right?